Hello, beautiful souls. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I'm on a little Eckhart Tolle kick. I just made that video on returning to the body, which is a concept that he discusses heavily in The Power of Now. And he also talks about it in A New Earth as well, which is one of my all-time favorite spiritual books. There are so many very powerful golden nuggets in that book. But there is a section in particular, I believe it's in chapter 8, and it's what he refers to as the discovery of inner space. So I wanted to talk a little about that today, what it means, and how can we find that? How can we tap into that and tune into that? It's a very, very similar concept actually to returning to the body. So the meditation that I did in that video of returning to the body is a great way that we can really help us understand what exactly it means to discover the inner space within ourselves. But I actually found that this concept was so incredibly powerful that it deserved its own video. So he starts off chapter 8 by describing this story it's a Sufi story about this king who he claims was always torn between happiness and feelings of despair. So he went to a wise man and asked this wise man, how can you help me get through this? What can you give me that will help prevent this kind of feeling that I'm having? So he went to this wise man and he told him, I will pay any price you ask as long as you can help me with these feelings of despair that I face. I'm constantly switching between happiness and despair and I need a way out. So what is it that you can give me to help me get through this? And the wise man said that this gift that he would be willing to give him is so great, but that the entire kingdom would not be sufficient payment for him. That's how deep and profound this object that he would be willing to give him was. So he ended up giving him a box with the ring inside of it, and inscripted on the ring said, "This too will pass." And of course the king asked the wise man, what is the meaning of this? What am I supposed to do with this? How can this help me? And he said, wear this ring and whatever happens in your life, whether good or bad, touch it, and so that you can always be reminded that this too shall pass. And Eckhart then goes on to describe in the book about how this concept isn't to tell us that we shouldn't enjoy the good things in our life, right? But it's to always remind us of the fleetingness of every situation. And when we really understand this concept of everything always changing and the impermanence of life itself, it really does help diminish so much suffering that really we impose on ourselves. And that's why so much of these teachings, particularly within the Eastern spirituality space like Hinduism and Buddhism, do teach this concept of detachment, right? And they really emphasize how attachment is the result of so much suffering. This is pretty much the same exact concept. When we detach, we create this space within ourselves that is so healing when we're really able to tap into it. When we don't attach ourselves to worldly life, right? Which honestly is not real. Like, again, so many of these Eastern traditions will tell us that anything that we see in this kind of like 3D world is actually very illusory. And after the story of the ring, there's a statement that I felt was so incredibly powerful in the book. And he said that when we're able to really detach in a healthy way, you become like an astronaut who sees the planet Earth surrounded by the vastness of space and realizes a paradoxical truth. The Earth is precious and at the same time insignificant. When I first read this book several years ago, I was so heavily influenced by this story in the best positive way that I actually went out and I got a ring that says, "This too shall pass." And I try and wear it as often as I can. And so I wanted to share this story of detachment and of the ring saying this too will pass, because understanding that concept creates this dimension of inner space. Through detachment brings another dimension into your life, and that dimension is inner space, which is what we truly are, as I described in my previous video on returning to the body. Through detachment, as well as non-resistance and non-judgment, we gain access to that inner dimension. Again, it's this concept that so much suffering in the world is a byproduct of our attachment to form and our inability to disidentify ourselves from the physical world of form, which, as I mentioned, is not actually reality. And he says in the book, "Fulfill me, make me happy, make me feel safe, tell me who I am." The world cannot give you those things. And when you no longer have such expectations, all self-created suffering comes to an end. When that dimension is present in your life, you can enjoy things, experiences, and the pleasures of the senses without losing yourself in them, without inner attachment to them. That is to say, without becoming addicted to the world. When the dimension of space is lost, or rather not known, the things of the world assume an absolute importance, a seriousness and heaviness that in truth they do not have. Whenever you are upset about an event, a person, or a situation, the real cause is not the event, person, or situation, but a loss of true perspective that only space can provide. You are trapped in object consciousness, unaware of the timeless inner space of consciousness itself. The words, "this too will pass," when used as a pointer, can restore awareness of that dimension to you. A consciousness mesmerized by experiences and conditioned to identify exclusively with form, that is to say, object consciousness, finds it at first almost impossible to become aware of space. Presence is a state of inner spaciousness. When you are present, you ask, how do I respond to the needs of this situation, of this moment? In fact, you don't even need to ask the question. You are still alert, open to what is. You bring a new dimension into the situation, space. So those are just some of my favorite passages from the book that I wanted to highlight. But really, this is essentially just the concept of stillness, returning to the here and now, to the present moment, and being as still as possible helps us open up that inner dimension, that space dimension. So disidentifying ourselves from the ego mind. And another great way to do this is by trying to practice looking at objects without actually naming them, So if you're going to look at something, to just create the space around it without having to immediately put labels on stuff, which is oftentimes how judgmental kind of perspectives occur, because we're always in our head. Instead of creating space around the situation, which creates space within ourselves. Because thought is form, and being aware of stillness is really what it means to be still. Because stillness has no form. So I really hope this video was at least somewhat reflective for you, and you're able to really understand the concept of detachment, really the very important concept of detachment, as a way to create this inner space within ourselves and tap into the essence of our true nature. This was a very powerful concept for me to grasp and understand. And once I started implementing it into my life, I noticed so much peace, so much less suffering once I was able to disidentify myself as much as possible from the world of form. Because really, as I mentioned, so much of our suffering is self-inflicted, truthfully, because we don't know how to detach. We don't know how to, again, gain that higher vantage point and realize that everything actually is so insignificant. I'm hoping you guys all learn how to tap into that inner dimension yourselves. I'm sending you all so much love, and we'll talk soon.